The applause fades, but the energy in the studio doesn't relax, it tightens, like a wire pulled just a little too far. Ricky Gervais sits comfortably in his chair, one ankle resting on the opposite knee, hands loosely folded, wearing the expression of someone who knows exactly where this conversation could go and is perfectly happy to let it go there. Joy Behar watches him from across the table, her posture open but her eyes sharp, the practiced look of a host who has sparred with comedians before and recognizes when one is already halfway into the ring. "So, Ricky," Joy says, her tone light but deliberate, "you're famous for saying whatever you want and then calling it comedy. Do you ever stop to think about the impact of your words?" Ricky tilts his head slightly, as if genuinely considering the question. He pauses just long enough for the audience to lean in. "All the time," he says finally. "That's why I choose them so carefully." The audience laughs, a warm burst that fills the room. Joy smiles too, but it's the polite kind, the kind that signals she's not done. "Carefully," she repeats. "Some people might say recklessly." Ricky shrugs, unfazed. "Only the people who don't like what I'm saying." Another wave of laughter and applause ripples through the audience. One of the co-hosts shifts in her chair, glancing at Joy, sensing the direction this is headed. Joy leans forward slightly, resting her forearms on the table. "So you don't think comedians have any responsibility?" Joy asks. "I think comedians have one job," Ricky replies. "Be funny. Everything else is optional." Joy raises an eyebrow. "That's very convenient. It's very honest," Ricky says, smiling. Joy crosses her arms. "So when people say your jokes cross the line." "Whose line?" Ricky cuts in smoothly, not raising his voice, not interrupting aggressively, just sliding the question in like it's the most reasonable thing in the world. The audience reacts instantly, an audible, "ooh," followed by scattered applause. Joy exhales slowly through her nose. "You know exactly what I mean," she says. "No, I genuinely don't," Ricky replies. "Because the line keeps moving. One minute you're applauded, the next minute you're cancelled by people who weren't even laughing to begin with." The room buzzes. Joy's smile tightens, the humor giving way to something more pointed. "That sounds like an excuse to avoid accountability," she says. Ricky leans forward now, elbows resting on the table, his tone still casual but noticeably sharper. "No, it sounds like someone pointing out that outrage has become a hobby." The audience noise swells, applause mixed with gasps. Joy doesn't blink. "So you think people are just pretending to be offended?" she asks. "I think some people are," Ricky replies. "And I think some people confuse being offended with being right." That line lands hard. The applause is louder this time, sustained. One of the co-hosts opens her mouth, then closes it, choosing not to jump in. Joy shifts in her chair, her voice steady but firmer now. "You know," she says, "it's easy to say that when you're the one holding the microphone." Ricky smiles wider, as if he's been waiting for that. "Everyone has a microphone now. That's the problem." Joy shakes her head. "That's not true for everyone." "It's true enough," Ricky says. "Social media turned everyone into a broadcaster. The difference is comedians get blamed for what other people think." Joy leans back slightly, studying him. "So if a joke hurts someone, that's just collateral damage?" "No," Ricky says calmly. "It's part of human interaction. You don't grow by being protected from ideas." Joy's expression hardens. "Some ideas don't deserve protection. And some jokes don't deserve analysis," Ricky shoots back. "They're jokes, not policy statements." The audience reacts again, louder, more divided. Joy raises a hand, signaling for quiet, but the energy lingers. "You're oversimplifying," she says. "Words have consequences." "Of course they do," Ricky agrees. "So does silence. So does pretending not to notice double standards." Joy narrows her eyes slightly. "What double standards?" Ricky gestures vaguely around the table. "We celebrate free speech until someone says something we don't like. Then suddenly it's dangerous. Suddenly it needs disclaimers." Joy responds immediately. "Because some speech reinforces harm. And some censorship reinforces ignorance," Ricky replies without missing a beat. A sharp intake of breath ripples through the audience. Joy's jaw tightens. "So now you're saying comedians are defenders of free thought?" she asks. Ricky chuckles. "God, no, we're court jesters. The problem is people started taking us too seriously, and then blaming us for it." Joy scoffs softly. "Yet here you are, lecturing." Ricky nods. "Because I'm not offended by disagreement. I'm offended by hypocrisy." The word hangs in the air. Hypocrisy. Joy sits back, folding her hands together. "Explain," she says. We say we want honesty, Ricky continues, but only the kind that makes us feel good. We say we support art, but only if it agrees with us. That's not progress, that's comfort. The applause is loud now, sustained enough that Joy has to wait before speaking again. You're very good at turning criticism into applause, she says once the noise dies down. Ricky smiles. I've had practice. Joy nods slowly. But let me ask you this. If someone feels targeted by your humor, I'd say you're allowed to feel that way, Ricky interrupts gently. And I'm allowed to tell the joke. Both things can exist at the same time. Joy pauses. The room quiets again. And if they ask you to stop? She asks. I'd say no, Ricky replies simply. Because offense isn't harm. And comedy isn't cruelty by default. Joy's expression hardens further. Some people would strongly disagree. I know, Ricky says. They're very vocal. The audience laughs nervously. Joy exhales, then leans forward again, voice measured. You realize how dismissive that sounds. Ricky meets her gaze. Only if you assume disagreement equals disrespect. Joy opens her mouth to respond, but Ricky continues, his voice calm but unmistakably firm. And here's the thing, you don't shut down bad ideas by silencing jokes. You shut them down with better ideas. If a joke can destroy your argument, maybe your argument wasn't very strong. The applause rolls on longer than usual, filling the studio with a restless, almost electric energy. Joy Behar sits still, hands folded on the table, her expression unreadable as the audience reacts to Ricky's last line. The words hang in the air, heavy and sharp, and for a brief moment it feels like the show itself is holding its breath. Joy finally lifts her chin. So now, she says carefully, you're saying comedians are the guardians of truth. Ricky lets out a short laugh and leans back in his chair. Absolutely not. We're not guardians of anything. We're jesters. The problem is people started expecting sermons from clowns. The audience laughs again, but this time it's mixed with murmurs. Joy shakes her head slowly. That's a neat way to dodge responsibility. Ricky turns toward her, still relaxed but clearly engaged. It's not dodging. It's defining the job correctly. You wouldn't go to a dentist for legal advice, would you? Joy smirks despite herself. Depends how bad the dentist is. That earns another laugh, easing the tension for half a second. Ricky nods approvingly. See, that's a joke. No one died. Joy leans forward, her tone sharpening again. But jokes don't exist in a vacuum. They land in the real world, on real people. Everything lands in the real world, Ricky replies. That doesn't mean everything is violence. The audience quiets again. One of the co-hosts glances between them, sensing the conversation tightening like a knot. Joy presses on. You talk about free speech as if it's under attack, but you're one of the most successful comedians in the world. No one's silencing you. Ricky nods. True, I'm doing fine, but I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the climate. What climate? Joy asks. The one where jokes are treated like crimes and comedians are expected to issue apologies like press releases, Ricky says. Where intent doesn't matter, context doesn't matter, only how loud the outrage is. Joy exhales. Intent matters, but impact matters more. That's the line, Ricky says, pointing lightly at her. That's the line everyone loves. But impact is subjective. One person laughs, another gets angry. Who wins? Joy doesn't hesitate. The person who's hurt. And what about the person who laughed? Ricky asks. Do they not count? The audience murmurs, divided. Joy pauses, choosing her words. They count, she says. But not at the expense of someone else's dignity. Ricky tilts his head. Who decides what dignity is? Joy opens her mouth, then stops. The pause is noticeable. Society does, she says finally. Ricky smiles. Society can't agree on pizza toppings. Laughter ripples through the crowd, louder than expected. Joy rolls her eyes, but a smile tugs at the corner of her mouth. You're very good at deflecting, she says. I'm very good at jokes, Ricky replies. Deflection is just a side effect. Joy's expression turns serious again. Do you ever worry that what you're doing just adds fuel to division? Ricky shrugs. I think pretending division doesn't exist is worse. Comedy doesn't create tension, it reveals it. Joy nods slowly. Or it exploits it. That's a risk, Ricky admits. But so is every form of art. You don't ban knives because someone might cut themselves. The audience gasps lightly at the analogy. Joy raises an eyebrow. That's an interesting comparison. I'm full of them, Ricky says. Joy sits back, folding her arms again. You know, people watching this are already picking sides. Ricky looks directly into the camera. Hi, everyone. The audience bursts into laughter. Joy sighs, shaking her head. You enjoy this, she says. I enjoy honesty, Ricky replies. And I enjoy not pretending we all agree. Joy studies him for a moment, then softens her tone. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever crossed a line? Ricky doesn't answer immediately. For the first time, he pauses longer than usual. Yes, he says finally. Of course, everyone does. Joy leans in. And did you apologize? Sometimes, Ricky says. When I meant it, Joy nods. And when you didn't? Then I didn't, Ricky replies. Because fake apologies are worse than bad jokes. The audience reacts again, a mix of applause and uneasy laughter.